Hi, class. If you have been following my discussions, you will see that I have a much needed change of scenery. I am now back home. Been back home about a week now from with my son. So before I get into my analysis, I just want to thank you guys so much for reaching out, checking on my son while we were in the hospital. Thank you so much, Dr. Baker, for your kind words on my teaching material for this section. And thank you to those classmates that reached out from reviewing my discussion so they kind of knew what was going on. So I really do appreciate that. So hopping right into our video analysis, chapter 4 was extremely I didn't realize it at the time, but I do realize it now after I'm kind of going back through the discussion board. I flip back through the chapter. I like to highlight a lot, so the online highlight, and just so I can kind of get some points. And I actually missed a few highlighted points that I wanted to cover from the chapter. But the overall feel of the chapter, and I didn't get it at the time, maybe because there's a lot of noise, external noise going on. But I was really, that chapter had some heavy topics. It had some real heavy, real life situations that I know might be difficult for some people to talk about, especially, the part that we're relating this to real life experiences. There are some really heavy topics that are true. A lot of statistics that were in the chapter are alarming. They really open your eyes to just drinking and just the role that media advertising plays in that. So speaking of that, like when the first parts of the chapter, when we are discussing excessive alcohol consumption, those stats were real. Um, and it was almost to the point that we tend to overlook the seriousness of excessive drinking. And I was watching one of our classmates discussions earlier, when she was telling us that she was alarmed by the statistics that she read from binge drinking compared to just alcoholism, and that is a real thing. So thank you so much, classmate, for pointing that out. Alcoholism and binge drinking is totally different. I have suffered, I don't want to say suffered, that's pretty a strong word, but I have had life experiences with a parent that um, did suffer from alcoholism and substance abuse. So it really hit home. So, and it wasn't the fact that I wanted to go first to do this. This chapter really did kind of grabbed my attention. I was so excited to present the materials just because of how it does relate to some of my real life experiences. But back to some of those statistics in that first part, the excessive alcohol consumption. Um, I didn't realize, or I didn't look at it in the same aspect as they put in the text as they explained it to us. But over 15% of people binge drink, and those binge drinkers are actually consuming or makes up the portion that consumes the most alcohol in this country. So binge drinking is a serious thing, and binge drinking can develop into alcoholism. Even though you are correct, classmate, they are not exactly the same, but binge drinking can turn into alcoholism. So how do we take away the coolness from it? And anything in too much in excess is not a good thing. So everything, in my opinion, should be done, in small increments, in controllable sizes. Myself, I'll give a great example. I don't suffer from alcoholism, and I'm not a binge drinker. I'm not really a drinker at all. But I am a junk food eater. I love junk food. I binge eat junk food when I'm stressed. So this, past couple weeks when I was in the hospital with my son, I did find myself snacking candy, the cakes, the chocolate, and I was like, okay, this is not good. So then I get mad at myself, but I realized like, oh my gosh, I just consumed 3 candy bars. And so, and that's some sort of to drinkers. It might start off as 1 drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks. The next thing you know, you're a whole 6 pack in, and you're looking for the next 6 pack. And then you maybe repeat that habit every weekend. So your binge drinking oftentimes does kind of develop into alcoholism, which will have the same health effects, on your body. And then just, so disclaimer, I'm going to drop some heavy bombs right now, so I don't want to offend anyone. So if you have a hard time discussing some things, I just want to give a little preface that you might not want to hear this part. But alcoholism, it was heavily linked to, um, I'm so sorry to say this, it was heavily linked to individuals that suffer with suicidal ideation or even have completed their attempt at suicide. That really, as a media, is looking at the media, it's like, oh, of course we can't advertise that, but how can we shed light and bring notice to some of the serious effects of alcohol um, usage? So, as the chapter states, people are much more likely to attempt suicide when they're drunk or when they're not coherent. And oftentimes, those drinkers are not just drinking, they bring other substances, other uppers and downers into the combination with the alcohol, which is a whole nother issue. But if you are, a college student, and I always kind of refer back to those early college students because I feel as though a lot of those college students, especially, away from home, first time freshmen, they're on campus, they're more likely to experiment. They're more likely to go to the parties and where they having the punch or whatever else beverage is passing around, and it's so socially recognized and socially accepted that we're not realizing that that could be the makings of what could eventually in the future become a serious issue. So I do think that we can't get away from them advertising because you look at it from that's the moral, the ethics side, but when you look at it from the professional, the business side, they're there to make money. Big companies are there to make money. So what other way can we push our products instead of advertising? So you do have these people that know college students are more likely to consume alcohol, they're more likely to binge drink, they're more likely to participate in these types of situations because they think it's socially accepted. So if I know that this is going to be my biggest target audience, if this demographic is going to bring me in the most return in off of this product, then that's who I want to target. So I do feel like as much as the advertising are targeting that particular stigma of group, there should be something that we should do to combat it. So I personally believe that these alcoholic beverage companies, I believe they should invest just as much into sobriety programs or responsible drinking programs, just as much as they're putting into buy our drink. You're right, classmate. I did notice that too when I was looking at the images, to kind of support the chapter, that it was boob crazy. It's like boobs, like boobs everywhere. So I was like, oh, that's a bit much. And I guess because we don't typically see all the advertising ads all together. So if you're watching television or scrolling through your phone, you might see these ads every now and then. Then, of course, now most of us stream services. We're not too much in the um, television era anymore, cable television era. My mom still is, but she's probably one of the few people I know. I know me too. I'm guilty. I still have cable television. But those ads were more geared. They were kind of spread out, so you didn't really get the full boom hitting your face effect and seeing all of those ads together. So that was another revelation from that chapter and from my teaching materials that really stood out to me was there are some heavy topics in here. There was some really oh, excuse me. I'm not gonna restart my video for that. Sneezing is normal. Um, then further along in the chapter, they did briefly mention about the risk factors of excessive drinking, um, and it talked again in that section about the students and at that age where you are think they said like 18 to 25. So, yeah, college friends. And then also, something else that I did not mention in the reading was seasonal times. There are times in the country where we see a spike in alcohol usage, and also that translates into a spike in the advertisement for these alcoholic beverages. So, if you really think about it, what season are we in now? We are in football season. Football season, sporting, heavy sporting events, there are usually some type of alcoholic beverage involved. There's definitely some advertising, there's definitely some pushing for it. So that's another thing that we have to pay attention with the media. Now, in rotation or around those certain big events, like sporting events and things like that, they're really going to push their message. They're really going to get that advertising out there because if I have this event that's going to attract thousands of people, I want that arena to sell my beverage. Once again, on the business side, why not? That's what's going to make us money. But on the more ethical side, should we really do that? Is it a way we can moderately advertise it without, you know, putting so much pressure on this is what's socially accepted? You can't go to a baseball game without a cold brew, or you can't sit at the football game, without your beer or your martini or your margarita, whatever your choice of drink is. And we're going to capitalize off that. So that's really a big deal. So I am glad that later in the chapter we discuss things like alcohol advertisement regulations. And take a I have to take a page out of a book that's something I learned years ago during my first time at Alabama State. I had a professor named Mr. Hemsel. God rest his soul, Mr. Hemsel. Um, I never knew this, and I really haven't gave it much thought since coming back to school, and particularly in this course. That if you look at advertisement for alcohol, they're never drinking it. So that's almost like a scapegoat. That's almost like a way that I can get away with this without actually doing it. So we all get the message. We're walking around with our cups and we're toasting and we cheers to the holidays and cheers to the day, but you never actually see them put the cup up and drink it because they can. So that's almost a way of saying, I'm not telling you guys to drink. My commercial doesn't depict someone drinking, actively drinking. We're just holding the cups in our hands. But our brains know if you're holding a cup in your hand, you're holding it in your hand to drink. So that's also something that I found very manipulative. That's the perfect word I can use for it. And that's exactly what a lot of advertisement is persuasion and manipulation. And when you think about it, isn't that what eventually the end goal is? I want to get my message across to you, and I want you to follow my message, and I want you to support my products. So if I can effectively communicate that, I have a chance of effectively persuading you or manipulating you into using my product or my drink. So that's just some little tidbits that I did not necessarily include in my teaching material that I highlighted and had thoughts on after actually completing the assignment and after reading or watching my fellow classmates' reviews. So yeah, so this chapter, it was fun to do the teaching materials, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I can't wait to see how we're able to engage with the future materials that we posted. Okay, thank you guys again, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.